What's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Bulls Latest. Your host, Matt Johnson, here as we kick off yet another week of the NBA offseason. I wanted to start today's show by talking about Kobe White and his contract situation, kind of looking at the bigger picture when it comes to this player and what to expect. It is going to be no shortage of money that he's going to want in his next deal. I think Kobe White and his camp is going to envision a contract that pays him well more than $30 million annually. There's buzz that he wants a deal even higher than $30 million at this point. So it's something that's a big piece of the puzzle for Chicago, in which they need to consider even while they kind of work on Josh Giddey in this current offseason. Kobe White's going to come in the conversation sooner rather than later. And I think when you look at the financials of the Bulls, it's going to be a lot of money that you're going to have to be shelling out to another player in their backcourt very soon. When you look at Kobe White's side of things in his camp, he shouldn't have to deal with any of those issues next summer, though. More teams will have money available to spend, including the Bulls. The Bulls, who are projected to have the most cap space in the NBA this next offseason in 2026, are going to be major players. And I expect the Bulls to be a lot more active next offseason than they have been up to this point. I think Kobe White's definitely going to be at the front of those negotiations, but there's going to be a lot of competition for a guy like Kobe, assuming the Bulls don't ultimately give him the money he wants. He could end up going somewhere else. And I think there's a lot of flexibility in the unrestricted market in terms of when you look at Josh Giddey in the restricted free agency market, you don't really have that much flexibility in kind of wanting to get that big deal done quicker. So we'll see what happens with Kobe White. But, I just think when you look at him and what he was able to do post All-Star break with the tandem of Josh Giddey, it was very exciting, and those were ultimately the Bulls' two best guys down the stretch. So if Chicago doesn't give him the money he desires, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Kobe White. I think when you look at the team as a whole, though, the Bulls could use that tandem back next season and beyond. Giddey is the driver at Donovan's transition-heavy offense. White is the best scorer in the offense. So when you look at how the Bulls like to play, and they play with speed, up-tempo, and transition, and Kobe White's the best scorer on the floor. So it's going to be critical to see what they do. Being armed with a load of cap space and a need to keep moving forward with a recipe that led to winning in the closing months of last season, I think the Bulls will have plenty of say in where Kobe White ends up. I think the ball will be in their court, even though he is going to be an unrestricted free agent. I do anticipate, like I've talked about, him finishing out this next season in Chicago through the trade deadline. I don't think Kobe White's going anywhere, to be honest with you. I will go over, though, a trade scenario that could make some sense. This is more of a Wilder thing, but I'll get to that later in the show. But ultimately, the tandem of Kobe White and Josh Giddey was extremely strong. So I think that's something that if you're the Bulls and wanting to win ball games with some of the veteran presence you're going to bring back, considering the lack of moves with those guys this offseason, it makes a lot of sense to get Kobe White involved. So, and that, not just for this next season, but the future as well. So we'll see what happens there. I'll get to Kobe White a little bit more here shortly, but I wanted to touch upon some news here on a former Chicago Bull. It came out that Javonte Green signed a one-year deal with the Detroit Pistons to stay in the Eastern Conference. Javonte was a fun Bull to watch over his time in Chicago. He's known best for his strong play on the defensive side of the ball, most recently playing for Cleveland, the team which he signed as a free agent in February of 2025, 3 days after agreeing to a contract buyout with the Pelicans. So Green appeared in 18 games with the Cavs, averaging 9 minutes a game, 3.3 points a game, and 2.2 rebounds a game there. So it's kind of a limited factor there in Cleveland. Cleveland was the cream of the crop in the East, so not all that surprising that he wasn't able to have a huge role on that team. When you look at the majority of Green's career, though, the majority of it was spent with the Chicago Bulls. He was acquired back in March of 2021 in a three-team deal, went on to appear in 122 games for the Bulls, including 50 starts, with them through the 2023-24 season. He saw his playing time peak during the 2022-23 campaign, during which he recorded a career high in starts. He started 45 games for this Bulls team. And then he also averaged during that year 7 points per game and shot 54% from the field. So I think when you look at Javonte Green, he's an exciting player. I think he has plenty of potential. I think when you look at that exciting Detroit Pistons roster and what they were able to do a year ago, he's going to be an exciting add for that team. And I think he will find a nice role in that organization moving forward. So, kind of spinning off the earlier part of this show, though, I wanted to talk about a three-team trade scenario involving the Miami Heat, the Chicago Bulls, and the Toronto Raptors that would ultimately involve Kobe White. So let's take a look here. The reason why I put this together, when you look at the Bulls, they're lacking in the middle, where an aging Vooch is their top player on that part of the depth chart, followed by a solid but kind of unspectacular Zach Collins. I know I was heavy on Zach Collins and the impact that he made following the Zach LaVine deal coming over to Chicago. He played a nice role. And then obviously you have the underperforming Jalen Smith there as well. The Bulls are lacking at the 4 spot as well, where Pat Williams is. And the Bulls are also lacking at the shooting guard position, where you have Kevin Huerter, who again was a bright spot after that LaVine trade got done, but who knows what the future is going to be like for Kevin Huerter and his contract situation. He's kind of expensive too. When you look at I forget the exact figure in which Kevin Huerter is earning, but he's kind of an expensive guy. So I can't imagine he's going to be paid what he wants moving forward, especially if he has another good year by the Chicago Bulls organization. One place the Bulls are good in is the point guard spot, though. They're A-okay there. You're looking at a bolstered, a blossoming star in Josh Giddey. You got Ayo Dosunmu, and then obviously Trey Jones, who they just locked up. This kind of leaves Kobe White in the conversation, and then where I kind of wanted to include him in this deal, though. Ultimately, if you do lock up Josh Giddey, which I expected to get done by the end of this month, you got Ayo Dosunmu and Trey Jones. Ayo, I know, has, I think, one more year left on his deal, and then Trey Jones just got locked up for multiple years. So Trey Jones really the only guy who, at this point, is going to be around for the foreseeable future here. So Kobe White, no doubt, in my mind, is going to hit the unrestricted free agent market. It would be good for his brand and his career moving forward. I think if he wants to have a major payday, this is an opportunity to do that. Now, the Bulls having all that cap space and what I just talked about earlier is a huge player, because the Bulls are going to be in those talks, and they're going to be ultimately probably offering Kobe White a decent penny there. So we'll see what happens. But in this trade scenario, I have the Bulls receiving, and this is, again, Toronto, Miami, and the Bulls. So you have the Bulls receiving Scotty Barnes. Miami would receive Kobe White, Zach Collins, and the Bulls 2027 first rounder that is lottery protected there. So the Bulls would flip a first round pick, Zach Collins and Kobe White. Now, I don't hate this because, and we'll get into it a little bit here moving towards the end of this show, but I don't hate this for Chicago because it allows them to do a couple of things. Kind of rounding out this trade, you got Toronto receiving Tyler Hero, Miami's 2028 first round pick, which is also lottery protected there. And Tyler Hero himself is in an interesting situation in Miami. I believe he's got this season and the next in guaranteed money with his contract in Miami. After next season, he could be looking for a new home as well, unless Miami is going to make him a huge part of their future and pay him the monster contract he's going to want too. So I think in Toronto, that's a young and up-and-coming roster. It's an exciting group there. And Tyler Hero could be the next guy to bolster that team and throttle them into a playoff spot in the Eastern Conference. So we'll see what happens there, but ultimately that's the deal. Scotty Barnes to Chicago, Kobe White, Zach Collins in a 2027 first to Toronto there, and then or to Miami, I'm sorry, and then the Raptors would receive Tyler Hero and Miami's 2028 first round pick there. So going into the final part of today's show, I want to talk about 4 reasons why this trade makes sense for the Bulls. Now, I know a lot of Bulls fans will be like, no way, I wouldn't deal Kobe White. I don't want Scotty Barnes. I know there's going to be a lot of skepticism around that move. Again, these are just hypotheticals. I think it's a fun scenario to look at. It does make sense logically when you look at these 4 reasons for Chicago. The first reason being the point guard logjam would now be unjammed for Chicago. You would kind of free up the pressure and all the guards that you have on this team. You would flip one and get some assets in return. The second reason being Scotty Barnes fills the Bulls' massive hole at the wing. This is a problem for Chicago. You're so loaded in certain areas. You no longer have to rely on hoping that Patrick Williams is going to pan out in that contract that he earned himself and that he has kind of underperformed to this point. But Scotty Barnes fills that massive hole at the wing. And again, the third reason here, and this is a big one, at 24 years old, Scotty Barnes fits Chicago's timeline. And Chicago's timeline is one where they're trying to get young players with experience. It's something I've talked to so many times throughout this show, but Scotty Barnes would be a perfect fit in that. And again, I can't really foresee Toronto wanting to give up a guy like Scotty Barnes. He's a solid young talent there, but in Chicago, he would fit their timeline perfectly to a T, in my opinion. And then finally, I think the last reason why you would want to make this deal if you're the Bulls, the bean counters, so to speak, the guys who are making the financial decisions, the Reinsdorf family won't have to worry about giving Coby White the hefty extension he richly deserves. And unfortunately for Bulls fans, it's something that frustrates me so much, but they're going to ultimately probably play hardball with Coby White, a guy I think has been the most spectacular piece to this organization moving forward. But making this deal brings in a young, solid player who fits the timeline and what the Bulls are going to try and do. And then it frees up the possibility that it could hit the fan here in terms of negotiations with Coby White in this front office, because as we've seen, this Bulls front office can make it very difficult to make the easy decision. So that would ultimately eliminate that in terms of giving Coby White a bunch of money there. Who knows what the Bulls are going to do, though, and that's what I think is exciting is that they have, like I said earlier in the show today, they're going to have a ton of money to spend next summer, something they really haven't been able to speak to in recent years. So we'll see what the market looks like and who's available, but that's a trade scenario I wanted to throw at you guys, as well as some reasons why the Bulls should do that deal and why it makes some sense. So let me know what you think in the comments. I want to thank you guys for joining me on this Monday edition of Bulls Latest, and we will see you guys tomorrow.